means that you can only spend what you've actually got in your bank
Just
account.
like Michelle
How
said.
do you live without a credit card, though? Well, like when you're
I've never had a
travelling and
credit card.
check
Why-
into hotels and they need a credit card.
Why would I need to stay in hotels? I've got a
Oh, okay.
caravan.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The simple life,
okay.
Michelle.
Oh,
Sleep in the car.
you
A
do
text-
things
Stay at
differently
home.
down
Don't
there.
get stressed.
A text
You know,
from a listener.
This is the South Island. We
that's
do live
right.
differently here.
Yeah.
I keep a couple of bawbies in the purse just in case you're caught short somewhere. You have to buy something with money.
Dr. David Trite, Associate Professor at Massey's School of Economics and Finance. David, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jim.
We aren't going to get rid of cash from the sound of this, David.
Well, we might in due course, but it's not going to happen for a little while yet. What we're seeing is, surprisingly in New Zealand, the quantity of cash keeps on increasing. Though the growth in 2017 was relatively low. It was less than 1%, but there's still lots of cash out there.
How can it be that cash is still king, or princely at least, when credit and debit card use is still going up, David? That's interesting.
Well, it's interesting. There's somewhere over $1,000 per capita of cash in somewhere in this country, or people have taken it overseas with them.
Really?
Yeah. So there's about, in March 2017, there was 5.5 billion of cash. So that's somewhere over $1,000 a head.
$1,000 each?
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
I know. Certainly, I don't carry anything like that amount in cash, and I probably don't think anyone else on the panel does either.
It's
No.
under mattresses somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, who does? Where is it, David?
Well, some of it is presumably used for criminal purposes. Right. Some of it's probably been accidentally destroyed. But I don't think that's going to account for a huge chunk of the $5.5 billion.
You mean someone's burning money by mistake?
Well, it will happen.
Good Lord.
It will happen a bit. Yeah. I mean, that could account for some millions, but I don't think it's going to account for some billions.
No. That's an awful lot of money per person in New Zealand that we don't know the location of.
That's a fair assessment, yes.
Imagine if it's stored somewhere. No, I'm just joking. But, I mean, David, even if we're not drug dealing or avoiding tax, this also says, doesn't it, that we don't like being tracked minutely. We want to actually keep, I don't know, stuff up our sleeve and be more masters of our own fate and not have other people know, etc., etc.
But I think there is actually quite a large proportion of the population who don't use cash, who use cards. But clearly there is somebody holding a significant amount of cash, and we don't know who, we don't know what they're doing with it.
In your own case, has your use of cash diminished over the years? As you often hear people say, I don't carry it with me anymore, but obviously a lot of them do. What about you, David?
I use some cash, and to some extent it's a bit like the principle that Michelle outlined. If you've got some cash, that's what you spend, and if you're getting low on cash, well, maybe it's time you stop spending.
Yeah.
I'm amazed that there are that many people in the world with that degree of self-control.
Yeah, that's right. No wonder people are breaking into cars in Putarudu. They're looking for that cash. They're missing millions.
Dr. David Trite, thank you for joining us today. Well, someone's got the money, haven't they? Someone's got it. Jock Anderson, thank you for coming on, Jock.
A pleasure, Jim.
Always nice to hear from you. And Michelle Acourt, always great pleasure to see you.
Oh, lovely to be here, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Back tomorrow, and Checkpoint with John Campbell coming right up.
Ko te maira e hoa mā he kōrero kei te haere he kaupapa kei te karawhiua. Tonight on Checkpoint, the Labour Party's senior leadership under pressure over their response to what happened to 16-year-olds at summer camp. Theresa May lets the British bulldog off the leash. Russia tells it to sit. The high cost of rental accommodation, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, yes, but how about Whanganui? A Timaru panel beater cancels his contract with the country's largest insurer. Why? Kiri Roa, should that be the new name or original name restored for the Hamilton City Council? And Joseph Parker on a heavyweight title fight. Few people expect him to win. All of that and the latest on that New York helicopter crash coming up after the news at 5.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon. Ko Katrina Batten aho. The man accused of shooting dead his girlfriend said he never intended to pull the trigger. Turia Rangitai is on trial in the High Court in Auckland for the murder of 22-year-old Chosen Koreheke in April last year. Giving evidence in his own defence, Mr Tai says he didn't expect the gun to go off when he pointed it at Ms Koreheke's brother.
As I pointed it at Neeson, just a bam, it just went off.
It went off?
Yeah.
Do you remember pulling the trigger?
No, honestly, don't remember pulling the trigger.
Did you intend for the shotgun to go off?
No, I never had no intentions like that.
Turia Rangitai said he rushed to try and help Ms Koreheke, laying her on the ground and trying to find the wound. The trial continues tomorrow. New Plymouth Boys High School Principal Paul Verrick says the death of a student from meningitis does not present an increased risk to students at the school. The student died on Saturday, but it wasn't confirmed he died of the disease until yesterday. The Taranaki Medical Officer of Health, Greg Simmons, says the case didn't pose a risk to the community. The principal says the Health Board is providing regular advice and support to ensure that students and staff are safe and have access to information around meningococcal disease. A Hamilton shopkeeper is in hospital after being attacked with a machete during a robbery. Two masked men went into the dairy in Grey Street at about 8:30 this morning, armed with an axe and a machete. Andrew McRae reports.
The two men attacked the shopkeeper, who was alone, striking him on the head and hands. It's been confirmed that he has a fractured skull. The police say the two assailants stole cigarettes and cash and fled in a stolen silver Mazda Familia, registration FEP 218. The dairy is now boarded up and the man's family are with him in hospital. The police want to hear from anyone who was in the area in Hamilton East this morning and who may have witnessed anything. In Hamilton, ko Andrew McRae tēnei.
A police interview with a man later convicted of murdering a road worker seriously breached his rights, but the Crown says that should not reduce his culpability for the killing. Quinton Winders is seeking to overturn his conviction for the murder of George Taiaroa in 2013. Here's our court reporter Anne-Marie May.
Quinton Winders was ordered to spend at least 17 years behind bars for murdering Mr Taiaroa, who was shot dead while operating a stop-go sign in Waikato. The police interviewed Winders under the guise of investigating a driving incident, but also questioned him about the murder, which his lawyer said was a breach of his rights. However, the Crown said Winders knew the police wanted to speak to him about George Taiaroa's death, and they did not keep him in the dark in an effort to prompt an unguarded confession. The court reserved its decision. This is Anne-Marie May.
Christchurch Boys High says 2 boys have been suspended after a video of a teacher was uploaded to a pornography website. The school says the teacher was filmed while in class. The headmaster of Christchurch Boys High School, Nick Hill, says the students breached the school's standards regarding respect for others and the school will not stand for such behaviour. The police say a complaint has been received and they're looking into the details. Last year, a photograph was taken up the skirt of a teacher and shared. The Lyttelton Port Company says the strike by the Rail and Maritime Union has shut the port and will cause serious supply shortages. The union says its 200 port workers are striking for 13 days after negotiations with the Lyttelton Port broke down. Rachel Graham reports.
The Port Company's operations manager, Paul Monk, says the port manages more than half of the South Island's container volume, and the likely impact of the strike borders on being irresponsible. He says the company is committed to resolving the dispute, but can't accept the union's unreasonable salary demands and inflexible position. A union organiser, John Kerr, says the 2 key sticking points are the port company's refusal to pay staff who returned to work after an earlier strike notice was lifted, and refusal to give parity with another port union, the Maritime Union of New Zealand. This is Rachel Graham.
It's 5:05. Sport, the All Blacks skipper Kieran Reid has played a leading hand in the Warriors' opening round win of the National Rugby League season. The Warriors had an impressive 32-20 win over South Sydney in Perth at the weekend, and accrediting a breathing exercise Reid showed them during a pre-season camp to end a 9-match losing streak. After each try they scored, skipper Roger Tuivasa-Sheck got his side back in a huddle to make sure they stayed in focus.
Scoring tries, we're getting excited and everything is going well for us, but just from previous years we've been ahead a lot and just lost the last 10 minutes, so being able to refocus and reset and go again and focus on the next task has been real helpful.
Warriors captain Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Successful New Zealand netball coach Nolene Taurua has recommitted to the Australian League until the end of next year, ruling out any possibility of a role with the Silver Ferns leading into next year's World Cup. Taurua took the Sunshine Coast Lightning to the premiership title in the inaugural Super Netball competition last year. The extension until the end of the 2019 season ends any likelihood of replacing Silver Ferns incumbent Janine Southby early, with Southby's future under the spotlight due to the side's recent poor form. Taurua missed out on the Silver Ferns job in 2015, despite being the only New Zealand coach to have won the Trans-Tasman League with the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic in 2012. The Dunedin skier Adam Hall is in 7th place after the first run of the Super G combined at the Pyeongchang Paralympic Winter Games. The slalom is later tonight. That's the news.
Summer camp goes badly wrong.
Clearly what's happened here, and again, no excuse for what's happened, but clearly we needed to make sure it was a much safer environment than it was.
The fallout?
The reason why we didn't is because the advice that I've got is that it can add more distress when a wider group of people become aware of the incident.
Is there more to come?
When the thing occurred, it was taken seriously enough for the person who committed the assault to be removed. I don't think you could say it wasn't dealt with then right.
Watch This Space, Morning Report with Guy and Espino and Susie Ferguson, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, New Zealand's burgeoning transient population, now the size of our 4th biggest city. And after 10, Pentagon Papers whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg on the Doomsday Machine, his startling insider account of American nuclear war planning. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland to Taumaranui and Taranaki, also Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Taihape and Whanganui. A few showers about the western coasts, spreading elsewhere this afternoon and evening, then clearing and becoming fine tomorrow, but cloudy periods remain about coastal Taranaki. Gisborne to Wairarapa, fine apart from a few showers about Wairarapa and southern Hawke's Bay this evening and overnight tonight. Manawatu to Wellington, fine apart from a few showers from late afternoon or early evening, then clearing tomorrow, early tomorrow, cloudy periods tomorrow evening. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, mainly fine but a few showers this afternoon and evening, some possibly heavy in Canterbury. For Buller, Western, Fiordland and coastal Southland, cloudy periods with showers at times. Otago and the remainder of Southland, mainly fine but isolated showers this afternoon and evening. And the Chatham Islands, rain possibly heavy due to easing to a few showers late this afternoon with fine breaks increasing tomorrow. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina Batten. Welcome everyone. Thank you for being with us. The senior leadership of Labor has come under intense pressure today after revelations of sexual assault at a youth camp. The party has apologised to 4 teenagers who were sexually harassed by a 20-year-old man at the camp, a man who was not a party staffer or party member. The Prime Minister says the delay in getting help for the victims of the assault was a clear failure on Labor's part. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Bramwell.
The Young Labour camp was held at Waiawheta Camp near Waihi over the weekend of the 9th and 10th of February. At a party on the Saturday night, a 20-year-old man got very drunk and sexually assaulted 4 16-year-olds, 2 men and 2 women. Labour Party General Secretary Andrew Curtin says the decision not to go to the police or to tell leader Jacinda Ardern was to keep the circle of people who knew small.
We wanted to make sure that we would keep the confidentiality of those involved, and that they didn't get the impression that a whole group of other people knew who they were, knew what had happened, and were talking about it. And that's the advice I've got from professional people who work in this area, and that's why we decided to handle it from the party side of things.
On March the 4th, the Cabinet Minister Megan Woods saw a Facebook message about the incident from a young person and immediately called Andrew Curtin and asked him to contact that person, which he did. Labor didn't contact Sexual Abuse Support Services provider Help until March the 5th, more than 3 weeks after the assaults took place. Help's Chief Executive Connor Twyford says her organisation absolutely endorsed Labor's approach of keeping the circle small.
It's absolutely up to the people who experience sexual harm to decide what they want to do next. In some cases, telling parents or the police without telling them first could have a really detrimental effect.
Ms Twyford says sometimes delays do occur in making complaints because there's an element of shock and trauma involved.
Sometimes people say they're okay immediately after, but sometimes they're not, and sometimes it can take a while for people to realise they're not okay. So it's really good and important to check in regularly to make sure that people are getting the support they need.
But Jacinda Ardern says the delay was a failure on Labor's part.
There was a delay in services and support being offered to those involved. So the morning after, the person, the alleged offender in this case, was ejected from the camp. The question was asked of those involved what more they'd like done, if they'd like to take it further. But there was some follow-up that later took too long.
So is Andrew Curtin safe in his job after the Prime Minister was blindsided yesterday when a reporter asked her about the incident during her regular post-cabinet press conference?
Yes, but we of course have to do better. You know we need to do better.
The National Party and the Greens have also held residential camps, but say they've had no complaints. The president of National's Youth Wing, Stephen Sunday, says they ensure alcohol is only available to those over the age of 18 years at Young Nats events. The ACT Party leader David Seymour says the party hasn't held residential youth camps for a number of years, partly because it's become an increasing liability to do so. He says there's some hypocrisy in this case on the part of the Labor Party.
The Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act, which Labor opposed as making it too easy for young people to get alcohol at the time, has been breached here by the supply of alcohol to young people, it appears, by the political party, which said the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act was too lax.
The police won't comment on whether anyone has contacted them or laid a formal complaint. They say they want to ensure anyone who does want to contact the police can feel comfortable in doing so. Ato i te whare parimata mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Chris Bramalaho.
12 minutes past 5 on Checkpoint. In rhetoric seemingly calculated to rally the British bulldog spirit, Prime Minister Theresa May didn't pull any punches in Parliament, saying it is highly likely that Russia was behind the poisoning of a former Russian spy and his daughter. The PM said Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia were attacked with a nerve agent developed by the Soviet military in the 70s and 80s. Russia's foreign ministry hit back immediately, saying Mrs May's comments were a circus show and part of a political information campaign against Russia. The BBC's James Landale has this report.
Today, police continued to examine the Salisbury home of Sergei Skripal, more than a week after the former Russian intelligence officer and his daughter were attacked with a nerve agent. A week during which it's remained unclear who carried out the crime and why. So this morning, ministers gathered for a meeting of the National Security Council looking for answers. An update on the investigation from the police and intelligence services that would allow them and the Prime Minister to decide what steps to take next. For some days, ministers have been pushing Theresa May for a tougher response. Well, this afternoon she was clear who she thought was responsible and what they should do.
It is now clear that Mr Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with a military-grade nerve agent of a type developed by Russia. This is part of a group of nerve agents known as Novichok. Based on the positive identification of this chemical agent by world-leading experts at the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory at Porton Down, our knowledge that Russia has previously produced this agent and would still be capable of doing so, the government has concluded that it is highly likely that Russia was responsible for the act against Sergei and Yulia Skripal.
She said the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, had summoned the Russian ambassador and told him he had until the end of tomorrow to explain whether this was a direct act by the Russian state or by others who now control the nerve agent.
Mr Speaker, this attempted murder using a weapons-grade nerve agent in a British town was not just a crime against the Skripals. It was an indiscriminate and reckless act against the United Kingdom, putting the lives of innocent civilians at risk. And we will not tolerate such a brazen attempt to murder innocent civilians on our soil.
Jeremy Corbyn. The Labour leader criticised the Conservatives for accepting money from Russian donors and called for tougher sanctions on oligarchs living in London. But
we need to continue seeking a robust dialogue with Russia on all the issues currently dividing our countries, both domestic and international, rather than simply cutting off contact and letting the tensions and divisions get worse.
Earlier today, before the statement, President Putin was visiting an agricultural centre in southern Russia and dismissed a question from the BBC's Steve Rosenberg.
President Putin, BBC News. Is Russia behind the poisoning of Sergei Skripal?
We're dealing with agriculture here, as you see, to create conditions for people's lives. And you talk to me about some tragedies. First, get to the bottom of it there, and then we'll discuss this.
But now that Russia has been blamed officially for what happened here in Salisbury, it has 24 hours to decide how to respond. That was James Lansdale from Salisbury for the BBC, of course, 60 minutes past 5. A man accused of shooting dead his girlfriend says he never intended to pull the trigger. Turiarangi Tai is on trial for the murder of 22-year-old Chosen Koroheki in April of last year, and today he took the stand to give evidence in his own defence. Our reporter Sarah Robson has been in the High Court in Auckland.
Turiarangi Tai said he had been arguing with Chosen Koroheke and he decided to get out of the house on April 4 last year and spend a couple of days at home. He headed out of the driveway of the Pakaranga house, but the car had run out of petrol and he had to go back inside to get his FPOS card as well as the gun he had borrowed from a friend. Mr Tai said he picked up the gun and went to the bedroom where Ms Koroheke was with her brother Nason and his girlfriend after checking the safety was on the gun. He said he pushed the door open but it was kicked back in his face. He eventually got into the bedroom and got his FPOS card. But Mr Tai said when he saw Ms Koroheke's brother clenching his fists and his jaw, he pointed the gun at him.
As I pointed it at Nason, just a bam, it just went off.
It went off?
Yeah.
Do you remember pulling the trigger?
No, honestly, don't remember pulling the trigger.
Did you intend for the shotgun to go off?
No, I never had no intentions like that.
Asked what happened next, Turiarangi Tai said he dropped the gun on the spot, but he said he doesn't remember what happened to it.
I wasn't really focused on the gun, I was focused on her because she was clutching her stomach. I didn't even know she had been shot, really. She just clutched her stomach and that's when it hit me that something had happened.
Mr Tai said he grabbed Ms Koroheke and laid her on the ground and started looking for a wound.
I was pretty much in shock. We were all in shock. Everyone in the room was in shock. But you know, I knew I had to do something real fast. And I just first thing that came to mind was block where all the was coming from.
An ambulance was called and Mr Tai could be heard yelling "hurry up" in the background of the 111 call, which was replayed to the jury. Earlier, his defence lawyer, Peter Kay, told the court his client never intended to kill Ms Koroheke.
He would never intend to kill the woman he loved. Nor, perhaps stupidly, perhaps naively, did he think that death was likely.
The trial before Justice Muir continues tomorrow. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Sarah Robson, aho.
Well, it seemed inexplicable, but a quite extraordinary explanation is emerging for the New York helicopter crash that killed everybody on board except the pilot. It may have been caused by a passenger's piece of luggage. The pilot has told investigators the bag may have inadvertently hit the emergency fuel shut-off button, shutting down the engine and causing the helicopter to simply plummet out of the sky. The 5 victims were all aged between 26 and 34, this report from Reuters.
The wreckage of this charter helicopter was pulled from New York City's East River on Monday. 5 passengers were killed when the sightseeing flight crashed into the water the night before. The pilot managed to free himself from the aircraft and was the only survivor of the disaster. Amateur video captured the moment the helicopter came down. The pilot sent a mayday call saying his engine failed.
Zerley Motel, mayday, mayday, mayday. East River, engine failure.
Someone climbed out of the helicopter and then was on top of the yellow raft, screaming help and waving his arms like this.
According to media reports, he told investigators a passenger's bag may have accidentally activated the chopper's emergency fuel cutoff switch. On Monday, the National Transportation Safety Administration said it hadn't yet determined the cause of the crash.
Our mission is to understand not just what happened, but why it happened, so we can prevent it from happening again.
Police identified 2 of the deceased as visitors from Texas and said one was a tourist from Argentina. The aircraft was operated by Liberty Helicopters. The company released a statement that it was, quote, focused on supporting the families affected by the tragic accident. The company has been involved in at least 2 other crashes, including a mid-air collision in 2009 that killed 9 people, and a 2007 crash into the Hudson River, where all the passengers survived.
That report in from Reuters. Gosh, over the past year or two, we've done a lot of stories on the high cost of rental accommodation and the shortage of it in our largest cities. But we are going to, well, a much smaller city tonight. First home buyers are being blamed for a shortage of rental properties in Whanganui, which has left some of the city's most vulnerable residents scrambling to put a roof over their heads. Emergency and social housing are chock-a-block, and people have resorted to sleeping in cars while landlords are being picky about the tenants and ramping up rents in the city. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin has this report.
Single parent Lauren Darby had no idea of the struggle that awaited her when the property she rented was sold late last year. The mum of 2 says she's been invited to a solitary viewing over the entire 4 months she's been house hunting.
There's not much out there. Each week, I think Pikahoia that I work with at Salvation Army, she averaged around 30 houses or so. But when it comes to like single mothers or on a benefit, or you kind of get looked sideways, and yeah, down to the bottom of the list more.
Ms Darby, who says she's never had an issue with a landlord, is now living in Salvation Army emergency housing. She says the reaction to an ad that she replied to at the weekend is typical of what she's experienced.
And she asked my situation, so I explained it to her. Obviously, single mum, 2 kids on a benefit, in emergency housing, and straight away she turned around and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'll have to stop you there. The ad says professional or couples." So that was it. End of conversation.
Ms Darby is not alone. Tracy Anderson, also a single parent, has just moved into a home after a similar experience.
Last November, my house sold that I was renting for 3 years. I applied for 150 plus houses, just got rejected, got declined, keep searching, keep going, and then finally I managed to score one. Got a roof over my head now, so it's good. Been here just a week.
Ms Anderson, who has had issues resolved by the Tenancy Tribunal, says things hit rock bottom when she had to bundle 9-year-old Reese and 6-year-old Isabel into her car.
It's been tough. I stayed with my mum for a few months, and then with a friend, to the point that at one stage I went into my car for a bit. It's just so hard.
Were you in the car with the children?
Yes.
How did you feel about being in that situation?
Not very nice. I feel like I failed my children.
The Whanganui branch of the property brokers got Miss Anderson into a home. Its manager, Philip Kubiank, says mum and dad investors are selling off rentals which are being picked up by first home buyers.
What we're seeing in the rental market is just a severe shortage of available rental properties, especially 3-4 bedrooms, and a heavy demand from prospective tenants. So a lot of tenants wanting properties and not enough rental properties available for them.
The median house price in Whanganui has risen more than 24% over the last 2 years to about $240,000 as people move to the city to get a foot on the property ladder. Rents are also up about $50 a week over the past 12 months. Glenn Anderson of the Salvation Army says the situation is dire and many landlords are taking advantage of the market and falling back on old stereotypes. Mr Anderson says people jumping on the Whanganui bandwagon are also getting caught out.
And some of that population that's thinking Whanganui is the answer to their dreams and their hopes are just turning up in the city with no plan, no prospects of work, haven't thought about housing at all. And so we've had people living in cars on the beach before they've connected with an agency.
And if you've ever wondered what it's like to bunk up in a car, take it from 9-year-old Reese. It isn't pleasant. What was it like having to stay in the car?
It was a bit noisy because sometimes the people would drive past really fast and I tried getting to sleep. Sometimes my sister would roll onto me and it was really hard.
Were you ever frightened when you were staying in the car?
A little bit.
The Ministry of Social Development is currently dealing with 64 applications on its Whanganui housing register. The Salvation Army has 8 emergency houses in Whanganui, all of which are full. Housing New Zealand has 560 properties in the city, all but 9 are occupied, and it is building 7 more. The District Council has 275 pensioner flats, 16 of which are being prepared to be let. I Whanganui, mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Robin Martin-Aho.
And if you've had experiences similar to those Robin was describing in that story in other parts of New Zealand, we'd really love to hear from you. Text 2101 or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz, particularly if you think you've had the experience of the kind of screening Robin was describing. The owner of a Timaru panel beaters is calling time on his relationship with insurer IAG, whose brands in New Zealand include NZI, AMI, Lumley and State. In short, Hamish Garine claims IAG and its offshoots aren't paying enough. Indeed, the work costs more than the insurer is prepared to pay, he says. Work billed to the insurer has made up 1/3 of his revenue, so it wasn't a decision taken lightly. But Hamish Garine said IAG have offered so little for some jobs, he either had to do the work at a loss or do it badly, and neither option appealed. Now, IAG dispute this. They wouldn't be interviewed, but sent us a statement, which we will read shortly. But Hamish Garine told me the money IAG will pay isn't worth the displeasure and hassle of dealing with them.
I guess the attitude in the relationship with the suppliers or the repairers is very poor. It's a very negative relationship where you fight for everything. You know, you fight very hard to get your money out of them, and they're not really negotiable unless you've got them really backed into a corner. And I guess when it comes to sort of pricing or ways of doing things, not many repairers are ever in a position where they can truly, back them into a corner and reason with them. So, I mean, we actually have exited before new contracts have come out. So no one, as far as I would know, would be actually in contract with IAG now because they finished in September. But I mean, the whole attitude is very much that they are the supreme power and you very much bow to them and do as you're told.
Can you give me an example, a sort of straw that broke the camel's back example?
Basically, I've looked at other businesses that are into IAG and done a lot of numbers on them, and they look at it and they basically see it as being the lowest profit margin company to work with the highest level of administration and compliance. So the amount of hoops that have to be jumped through to sort of stay in IAG repair and to sort of keep up to the sort of standards you have to be is sort of incredibly expensive and time consuming. I think even to fill out the application to have a contract renewed took an employee in their business, I think, a full week to fill out. Like, it's just insane what they have to ask and what you to jump through for basically our lowest paying customer that we had,
A full week to renew an existing contract?
Well, to apply to have it renewed, and this was meant to have happened in September. We're in March now. We still don't have a new contract that was meant to come out, and they're talking another 3 months till a contract will be available. And I think the last contract update that came was basically it was a pay reduction disguised as a pay rise. They increased the rate, but then basically the time frames for doing jobs was reduced. So basically they're just crafty, and that, I guess like a lot of listed companies, they're Australian owned, which is never a good start, but they're also, it's a money-making monster, a listed company. There's no emotion about it. They care about no one. It's just there purely to make profit. So I think premiums increase for consumers and the repairers get squeezed harder and harder, which, if you look at the cost of providing the repair service has only got more expensive, and that's why the industry is in such a bad state.
So the issue here is that there's an enormous amount of paperwork required, that they're very difficult to deal with, that even renewing a contract or applying to renew a contract is a hoop jumping exercise, which obviously you just can't be bothered doing any longer. But the other issue seems to be that they're not prepared to pay for the hours required to do the work as it needs to be done. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so a true hour is sort of irrelevant, really. They basically just allocate times that they want to. So they'll say it's going to take, 12 minutes to do this or this many minutes to do that. Like, even to remove a bumper, I think is like $19 to take it off or something and put it back on. It's just crazy how low the costs are. And then if you want to get extra money, you have to say, we removed the spotlight or the spotlight cover or badges to try and collect extra, dollars. It's like playing Candy Crush or something to get points. It's ridiculously complicated. It's insane. So,
and compare them with the insurers that you are going to keep working with. So I'm looking at your Facebook postings. That's Vero, FMG Tower, AA. Yep. What's the difference?
Night and day. Basically, any repairer would say it's night and day. So IAG are just consistently really difficult to deal with. I think a relationship, say for AA in particular, we're the only repairer for them in our region. They're really easy to get along with. They're really fair. If something crops up when we're doing the repair that's more complicated than anticipated, they'll say, oh, that's fair enough, that's fine, we'll pay for it. Well, in that similar situation, IAG typically would argue and say, that's going to be your cost, you didn't quote for it. But some stuff's unforeseeable. In an accident, you look at how a vehicle's damaged, you can't foretell every piece of damage inside it when you quote it before you start the job. So, they're just unreasonable. They're not fair. And so that's where we're privileged. We're in a position where we can let them go, where most of the repairers can't. And I think if you look at why this has got so much attention from our Facebook post, we weren't intentionally attacking IAG, but most of the repairers that are stuck with them, they don't have the luxury of choice. They can't afford to walk away from them because they're too much of their workload. And basically it would break them walking away from IAG.
Hamish Gardine. Now, IAG wouldn't be interviewed, but a spokesperson emailed us the following. Pour yourself a drink. It's quite long. IAG was sorry to hear the comments supplied to us by Checkpoint. During the past few months, as part of our regular accreditation process, we've asked suppliers for information which shows they're equipped, capable and compliant with health and safety regulations so they can take on the increasing number of repair jobs we receive. So far, more than 500 suppliers have indicated their interest in working with us. That's meant more time is required to finalise the process. We expect this will be completed by the end of this financial year. We run this process regularly as part of our broader commitment to keeping insurance affordable and maintaining health and safety compliance. We would like to discuss the matter further with this operator so we can better understand where they are coming from. Perhaps IAG will give the operator a call. We would love to hear from you. That's the end of the statement, by the way. We would love to hear from you if you have had a similar experience with IAG or any of its offshoots. You are with Checkpoint on RNZ. Thank you for being with us. Coming up, should the Hamilton City Council become the Kirikiriroa City Council? Vegans and vegetarians team up to launch a vegan seal of approval. Vegan seal of approval later this year. And Joseph Parker on the heavyweight title fight. Few people expect him to win, but he was quietly confident when we spoke to him. Well, there's nothing ever quietly confident about a boxer, is there? You can text us on 2101. We would love your feedback. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook Checkpoint with John Campbell, where you can also watch us and see my blue suit of the evening. Or you can email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. But before anything else, here's Katrina Batter, not in a blue suit.
Thank goodness. The sexual abuse support agency HELP says it backed Labour's view not to tell parents or police about sexual assaults at a Labour Party camp. But it didn't give that advice until nearly 3 weeks after senior party officials were made aware of the incident. The New Plymouth Boys High School principal says the death of a student from meningitis does not present an increased risk to pupils at the college. The student died on Saturday, but it wasn't confirmed he died of the disease until yesterday. A man accused of shooting dead his girlfriend says he doesn't remember pulling the shotgun's trigger. Turia Rangitai took the stand this afternoon to give evidence in his own defence. The police are investigating after a video of a teacher filmed in class was uploaded to a porn website. Christchurch Boys High says 2 boys were suspended for breaching the school standards regarding respect for others. 3 people are being hunted over the discovery of 13.5 kilograms of methamphetamine at Auckland Airport. The drugs, worth an estimated $2.4 million on the street, were found in heavy machinery several weeks ago. A shopkeeper's in hospital with a fractured skull after being attacked with a machete. 2 masked men robbed a Hamilton dairy this morning armed with the machete and an axe. The Littleton Port says a strike will cause serious supply shortages. 200 rail and maritime union workers have walked out for 13 days after talks with the port collapsed. And the Republican-led House Select Committee on Intelligence says it has found no evidence of collusion, coordination or conspiracy between the Donald Trump presidential campaign and Russia. The committee says it's now bringing its investigation to an end. Those are the headlines. I'm back at 6 o'clock.
Gosh, there's a lot of feedback coming in on IAG already. Fascinating stuff from people with similar experiences. Thank you. We'll be in touch with some of you, but we appreciate hearing from you. Let's turn to business news now with Giles Beckford, our business editor, who is beaming in from Wellington. Giles, hello. What are we talking about tonight?
Nothing like having the script, is there? Speaking of insurance companies, we're having another version on CBL. Now, I thought last night after I'd had a talk about the RBNZ's view of it that would be the end of it. But actually overnight, the Irish Central Bank has released the court papers it put up to put the Irish subsidiary of CBL Group into administration, and it makes for rather ugly reading, and this is really the centre of the CBL Group's problems. It is an island because it's Irish business. What was Irish-based business was doing a lot of business in Europe, and that's where it has run into trouble. Now, the Irish regulators, the central bank, basically paint a rather dim picture of the way CBL Ireland was being run. They say that its management deviated from normal practices, that it clearly was not putting aside enough money to cover its potential liabilities and claims upon it, that it loaded a lot of its claims and its reinsurance. Remembering this is at the heart of the insurance business, is that you take on the risk and then you offload it by reinsuring with another insurer. In this case, they've offloaded it onto the parent company in New Zealand. And it says that the company was writing too much business and growing too far, too fast, and couldn't cope. Now, you look at it from that point of view, and you have to say that already you have the seeds for calamity. In reply, the company disputed how much it was in trouble. It said that the demands that the Irish Central Bank was making upon it to stack up more reserves and to back its potential liabilities were excessive and could cause trouble to the company. And it said that it would fatally compromise the business if the Irish got in the way of the measures the company was trying to take to save itself. And it said if it did in fact step in the way and stop the Irish company from trying to carry on its business, it would be, to quote them, irreversible and catastrophic for the company and for the group. And you have to say that perhaps no truer words have been said, because that's the way it looks. I think the most chilling assessment from the Irish Central Bank's documents, it says, its conclusion, the company is insolvent or close to it. And therein, I fear, lie the future for the broader group.
Gosh, that is fascinating, that story, isn't it? It's the gift that keeps on giving, although perversely quite the reverse, really.
Indeed, and I think one of the significances, of course, is that so many ordinary folk who think that they've insured for the building of their home have been caught just so unwittingly and innocently. In all of this.
And that's shades, as you said last night, of the finance companies collapsing, right? Another side of the news, business reality in the United States, Giles.
Well, we don't often cover the overseas business things unless they're really gigantic, but this is the new Trump-era administration approach to business. Donald Trump has blocked a Singaporean-based company called Broadcom from buying a US-based company called Qualcomm for about 160 billion New Zealand dollars. The names may not mean much to you, but they make the little chips that go into mobile phones. They are the heart of smartphone technology. And Donald Trump has cited the same reasons as he did for the steel and aluminium tariffs: national security. It is not in the United States' national security to allow this big deal to go ahead. I wonder, perhaps, if there's not an element of the United States not just trying to protect its national security, but trying to perhaps monopolise technology to make sure that they actually have the first say on it and not other countries. We'll wait and see on that one, but that's the new Trump-era trade environment.
Thanks, Charles. How were the markets today?
Well, the share market, it edged higher, just about 9 points, 8473 is the close. That's up about 0.1%, but it's a record close. First time in a couple of months on that one. For the currency, a touch firmer on the US dollar at 73.2 US cents and just sitting just below 93 Australian cents.
Giles Beckford, our business editor, thank you very much indeed. So much feedback coming in tonight. IAG feedback, people saying that they're having similar experiences to those Hamish described just before 5:30. We will be in touch with you, and IAG will be back in touch with you too. Lots of people already, gosh, Robin's story was only on 15 or 20 minutes ago, and we're already getting detailed stories of people who feel they are being screened out of the rental market. This from Hayley, for example. I am a 38-year-old single parent living in Wellington. I have an 8-year-old boy who has a disability due to brain injury. I've never missed a rent payment, have great rental references and recently finished a criminology degree, yet had to apply for at least 10 rental properties before taking something that is far below a reasonable living standard. It seems that in Wellington, if you're a single parent or have a disability, landlords treat you like you're not worth being a part of society. I currently know of at least 4 other single parents who are living in rooms with friends or relatives because there is no housing available to them. Something has to change. We are human beings, says Hayley, and boy, Hayley's text is echoing a lot of other texts that we are already receiving. Thank you. Let's go to weather now very quickly with Met-Service meteorologist Angus Hines. Cyclone Holla passed relatively uneventfully, which is good. Let's look at the weather for the day or two ahead. Kia ora, Angus.
Kia ora, and yes, Cyclone Hola is rapidly moving away from the country, leaving us under the influence of a west to southwest flow, a fairly familiar weather situation for New Zealand, and for Auckland that does mean some early morning showers, but as the southwesterly dies away, those showers will clear up in the afternoon, leaving to a very pleasant evening. Highs of around 22 degrees in the city, and then looking out at the wider area now, it's a fairly similar story. There's going to be some showers early on, could hit any of the northern regions. They'll be clearing Bay of Plenty and Rotorua early, clearing elsewhere in the afternoon, so plenty of sunshine come evening time. Highs around 22 to 24 degrees. Wellington will be a nice fine day there, perhaps those northwesterly winds picking up at the end of the day, but lots of sunshine, as there will be in lots of the lower North Island areas. So Wairarapa, Wellington all in line for a sunny day. Could be a few showers in western areas such as Taranaki and Whanganui, but they'll all be clearing up in the afternoon as well. Plenty of sunshine for everywhere by the evening. That's also true down south, so Christchurch is in line for a lovely sunny day. There'll be some moderate westerly winds, but a high of 22 degrees and sunshine pretty much dominating throughout the day. If you happen to live on the west coast of the South Island or the far south, you could be in line for showers. Most of the rest of the South Island will be lovely and sunny, high cloud at times. Right, that's all from me today. Ka kite.
Thank you very much indeed, Angus. Investigators will begin analysing the black box flight recorder from a plane which crashed on approach to Kathmandu Airport in Nepal, killing up to 50 people. The aircraft, operated by the Bangladeshi airline US Bangla, missed the runway at the Mountain Ringed Airport and burst into flames. 71 passengers and crew were on board. Witnesses say it's extraordinary if anyone survived. The BBC's Andrew Plant has more.
The mangled remains of a passenger plane that crashed on landing with 71 people on board, many killed as the plane burst into flames, missing the runway at Kathmandu Airport and skidding to rest in a nearby field.
It was shaking and was about to crash, but it picked up and flew as it shook. It then tilted and hit its wings and engine, then crashed. I saw it catch fire and ran towards it.
3 people fell or jumped out of the windows, but the end of the plane was burning very badly. It would be hard to survive.
In the local hospital, relatives waited for news. Names of the injured pinned to the walls. Officials say 31 people survived the crash. Some have since died from their injuries, others now in a critical condition. Basanta Bahara was pulled from the wreckage.
I don't know anything, I don't remember. I remember only the accident, nothing else. I don't know how I got out.
Sanam Shakya managed to climb from one of the aeroplane's broken windows.
The plane was going up, down, right and left, so I thought it was some air traffic only.
The US Bangla plane, a Bangladeshi budget airline formed in 2016, came down in daylight around 2 p.m. on Monday afternoon. The company has been quick to dismiss an error by the pilot, blaming what they called a mistake by the airport's traffic control. A statement from airport authorities said the plane was already out of control as it came into land. Witnesses say the plane had approached the runway from the wrong end. The mountainous terrain of Nepal has a history of air accidents. A black box recorder has been recovered from what is Nepal's deadliest air crash for 25 years.
That report from Andrew Plant. What is in a name? Well, quite a bit if you're as passionate about it as the Mayor of the Hamilton City Council. Andrew King is proposing the council change its name in recognition of the city's Māori heritage, its relationship with iwi, of course, its centrality to the Kingitanga movement. But what do locals think about the Hamilton City Council becoming the Kirikiriroa City Council? Well, Te Mana Korahi reporter and Checkpoint reporter too, John Boynton, went to the land of the long, fertile gravel road to find out.
Do you like the name Kirikiriroa?
Yeah, I do actually, yeah.
What do you like about it?
I know, because it's a Māori name. I do have Māori in the family and Māori children, so they would relate to it a lot more than probably I would.
Well, me myself, I'm not someone that speaks Māori, but yeah, I just hope for the future that our language doesn't die, that's all.
Do you think the city at the moment embraces enough of the Māori history and culture of this area?
Probably not, but I don't see the name change as being a step in the right direction.
It doesn't bother me. As long as it doesn't cost me anything, I don't care.
Locals on the street in Hamilton are divided over whether the council should officially change its name to Kirikiriroa. Mayor Andrew King says now is the time to formally acknowledge the city's history. And while he's keen to hear what the public thinks, a decision either way will be made solely by councillors.
At the moment we've got Hamilton as the big font, Hamilton City Council, and Kirikiriroa in small font underneath it. I'd like to see them, the Kirikiriroa first and at least equal size to the Hamilton.
Mr King says he's had a number of discussions with local iwi representatives, including King Tuheitia, about his proposal.
Could this signal a move to embrace more te reo Māori in council and in your practices?
Well, this is about a name change. I mean, the word Kirikiriroa means a long stretch of fertile gravel, and that's what our city's been built on, fertile land, where back in those days it was growing kumara and vegetables. Now it's growing a very prosperous city, housing, medical, education and jobs, you know, so light industry. So this is going back to the roots of where we came from and where our city is going to go in the future.
Te runanga o Kirikiriroa kaumātua Bo Haireroa says a name change has been a long time coming.
The return to the originality, which is very important. The originality, which is Kirikiriroa, something that that the local iwi inherit. It belongs to them. It's of value to them, and it's very important to the local iwi, Kirikiriroa.
Other residents spoken to by Checkpoint today pointed out while they were in favour of a change, the council had more important issues to deal with.
Not a priority, because there are other more significant things that need to be done before a name change.
Could be a good sort of move forward, but at this stage it's probably more divisive than positive, because it's kind of like what we went through with the flag change. It's sort of like, I don't know, something that people can fight over, but maybe takes away from some of the issues that could be dealt with.
Bo Haireroa says it would have spiritual meaning for Tainui if the name changed to Kirikiriroa.
There is this historical saying, especially by our people, that says, change not the landmarks. Forever retain the full meaning and the importance of names given to various parts of our whenua, our land.
The council will vote on Thursday on whether a report should be commissioned on the change. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko John Boynton aho.
12 minutes to 6, some sport now. Now, boxing is not a sport some of you warm to, but over the next 3 weeks you may hear a great deal about it. Because on April 1st, Joseph Parker, the New Zealand-born son of Samoan parents, meaning his fan base is passionately from both countries, will fight Anthony Joshua in what's called a world title unification fight. It's complex, as is often the case with boxing, but Parker holds the WBO title and Joshua holds the IBF and WBA titles, meaning the winner will have all three. Unification. Anthony Joshua Joshua, who's British, is overwhelmingly the favourite, so much so that The Guardian recently looked beyond this fight and wrote about who his next opponent will be, which is fairly pointed, really. But Joseph Parker, who outside the ring is frequently described as a gentle giant, is in Vegas training hard and training to win.
So today we weren't doing any sparring, we're just doing a lot of pad work, skill work, working on techniques, and I was doing a lot of pads with Kevin, my trainer.
And when you say pad, what are you doing there? So are the pads, obviously the pads are AJ, right? And so you are going to where you think his vulnerabilities are? Is that how it's working?
Yeah, so Kevin holds the pads, instructs me on what we should be working on, and then from there we go doing different moves, making angles, and Kevin's pretending like he's AJ, throwing punches back at me. So it's pretty full on and pretty intense.
And it's amazing that there's weeks and weeks and weeks of this. I mean, you just keep doing it, don't you?
I think the most important thing for us and for boxing is repetition. And I think the more you do it and the more you practice it, the easier it becomes, and it becomes second nature when you get into the ring.
Yeah, and I guess fitness too, right? And resilience, the toughness. How do you keep mental control? Because anyone who knows you knows that you are a lovely, gentle man. So when someone is whacking you in the ring, how do you not get angry?
So the most important thing of working on my mental is firstly having a great team around me. Also, I have a mental coach that I work with, that's a bonus. But also the practice. When we practice in the ring, keeping composed under pressure and keeping composed when the other person is trying to do what they want to you. When we practice it in the ring, it becomes, like I said, second nature. And then the more we practice it, the better we become at it.
Have you seen those comments from Peter Fury? I mean, Peter Fury rates you. He says you are a much bigger threat to AJ than the British bookmakers, for example, are saying. But he also says if you get stuck on the ropes, you're in trouble. And if you get overexcited and go in too hard, you're in trouble. So it's a hell of a balancing act, isn't it?
It is. It's a balancing act. But like I said, we're getting all these comments from all these other fighters and coaches and all that. But I think the most important thing for myself is to trust in my coach, listen to his instruction. And like you said, we can't be there to catch his punches. We can't be there. We can't be stable. And we have to be moving. We have to make angles. So the game plan we have is the game plan we think is going to work.
What about the occasion, Joseph? Because there is going to be such a crowd and they will be so noisy, how do you kind of set that aside?
Now that excites me because I've fought in front of 15,000, 20,000 people. This is 80,000 people, and I'm excited because I love challenges. The challenges of fighting in his backyard, the challenges of fighting in front of 80,000 people. He's just another fighter. There's just another ring, but there's going to be a lot of people. So I just treat it as another fight. But I mean, like I said, the occasion is going to be a big occasion, but that's how you deal with the pressure.
Yeah. And in a way, I can't help feeling like there's more pressure on AJ himself. The bookmakers have him so overwhelmingly the favourite, it's as if he's fighting me, basically. And I mean, is there a danger that he's going to be caught out? The whole objective of your camp is to surprise him, right? Right from the first bell.
Yeah, we want to surprise him. We want to come out firing. And the more we practice it in camp, the better we're going to do when fight time comes. But, we are the underdog. Everyone's looking at it like it's an easy fight. He's going to come there and blast me out. But that's what's exciting because I want to give a big surprise. And I'm not going to say too much. I'm just looking forward to putting on the best show, putting on the best performance in my life. And it's going to be, trust me, I really want this bad.
Are you looking forward to it? Do you feel trepidation, or are you approaching it with great excitement?
I'll tell you this. I'm enjoying every moment of this journey. I'm enjoying the pain. I'm enjoying the good times, the happiness, the bad times. I'm enjoying everything. And I think it's important to be a happy fighter and enjoy everything because you don't get to do this very often.
No, you don't. And this is what you've dreamt of, right? This is what you're a boxer for exactly these opportunities. When are you leaving Vegas and heading across to the UK, to Cardiff?
We're leaving Vegas probably on the 16th, 17th of March, and we're going to be there 2 weeks before the fight just to get used to the cold weather, the time change, and just acclimatise.
Well, it's such an exciting opportunity for you, and you really seem ready for it and eager for it. So, you know, good luck, Joseph. We really wish you well.
Thank you very much. There's a bit more training to do, but trust me, when I go there, I'm going to make New Zealand sound more proud.
Will there be lots of Kiwis and Samoans in the crowd, do you think?
There will be. Listen, half of them is going to be my family. There's going to be a lot of them.
Joseph Parker, say what you like about boxing, and many of you do. He is consistently a delightful man to deal with. Now, fed up with scanning packet labels and doing quick Google searches at the checkouts, vegans and vegetarians are teaming up to launch a vegan seal of approval later this year. The move comes as more New Zealanders than ever buy animal-free products, but without a formal accreditation process, it's hard for shoppers to know if manufacturer labels are correct. Emma Hatton reports.
Carolyn Jack has been a vegan for 6 years. Before that, she was a vegetarian for 30. Walking through a Wellington supermarket, the president of the capital's Vegetarian Society branch says her weekly grocery shop takes time and involves a lot of label reading.
You have to do that for every product, and it makes it hard because a lot of people would buy a lot of these products if you actually knew for sure what it was, because it would be vegan, it possibly is vegan, but when you don't know, there's that feeling that, well, am I going to buy it? Thinking maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And if you're already a person that has to go around and read all of the labels, you're not just going to come and take a chance on stuff. You'll buy the stuff that you can work out is vegan.
Roughly a quarter of New Zealanders now identify as vegetarian or vegan, according to a Colmar-Brunton poll last year, a 7% increase from 2014. More than a third of people in their 30s now choose to go meat-free. Ms Jack has her go-to vegan products, but sometimes even those need double-checking to avoid surprises.
It contains lactose milk, onion powder, salt flavour. Wow. For something that you would think is just dried things to go in your soup, that's not vegan, which is very interesting.
The National Manager for the Vegetarian Society, Stephanie Lane, says apart from the Fair Trading Act, there's no regulation around vegan products, and a society-approved label will take the guesswork out of shopping for animal-free.
So it's purely a voluntary thing, and people will put labels saying they're vegetarian or vegan-friendly, for example, but it's taking them at their word, and we've come across a lot of incidences where they've been incorrect.
The Commerce Commission says it's had 8 complaints in the last 5 years relating to misleading vegetarian or vegan claims. Ms Lane says businesses will have to pay to be accredited, but having a rigorous auditing process will minimise the chances of non-vegan food being marked as vegan.
There's been occasions with some of my clients where they thought that their product was going to fly through and found that there's an ingredient in there that wasn't actually vegetarian or vegan, and they have had to change that particular ingredient to make it comply. So even when they thought they knew what they were doing and had everything up, ready to go, they found that actually they didn't.
Dunedin cosmetics company Azulis is one of those. Its director, Fernanda da Silva Tatley, approached the society after developing a range she thought was vegan-friendly. But it was a face cleanser that caught Ms da Silva Tatley out. It contained alcohol that had been treated with animal byproducts, something she says she never would have guessed.
There were a few interesting things that caught me blindsided. Some had processes that used some materials that were derived from animal byproducts, and I completely had missed that.
The Vegetarian Society has had its own label for a number of years, so is helping get the vegan one started. Ms Lane says the label is still in the final stages of being trademarked, but 2 businesses have already had the green light and a dozen more are completing applications. As for Ms Jack, she eventually found a vegan soup after spending 10 minutes scrutinising products.
So this is tomato and basil, so there doesn't look to be anything in there that would alarm a vegan, so yeah, you would have that one, the very special soup.
But many brands of wine and beer aren't on Ms Jack's menu, as they contain isinglass, a gelatin made from the dried swim bladders of fish. For Checkpoint, Emma Hatton.
It's 1.5 minutes before 6. We're getting a lot of feedback tonight on 2 stories. Robin Martin's story out of Whanganui about the real difficulty of getting rental accommodation, and it seems to be a heightened difficulty if you are anything close to being a beneficiary. John, that Whanganui beneficiary single mother's experience of being screened for a rental is certainly unpleasant. The problem is that many property investors are leveraged to the hilt on the inflated value of their Auckland home. They fear that if they get a non-paying bad tenant, they will go under financially themselves, says John from Invercargill. Lots of people describing the experience of being turned away and feeling like it's a kind of form of rental eugenics, really. They are being found wanting and dispatched, and people are communicating about IAG and telling us their experiences. The company I'm insured with for my car is State Insurance, IAG. They weren't paying my panel beaters bills for up to 3 months, and they had to refuse my job, as he said it wasn't worthwhile. To him, John, my friend, ended up closing his panel and paint shop due to exactly this. He couldn't afford to walk away from IAG, but couldn't afford to keep working for them. It worked out to be $30 an hour across the entire operation, which was simply unsustainable. He closed up and went to work for somebody else after 15 years. IAG, if you're listening, we're getting a lot of texts saying very similar things. We would love to talk to you about that. Do feel free to join us. You are New Zealand's biggest insurer. We think you can hack it.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, good evening. Ko Katrina Batanaho. Help, a sexual abuse support agency, says it's backed Labour's view not to tell parents or police about sexual assaults at a Labour Party camp. But it didn't give that advice until nearly 3 weeks after senior party officials were made aware of the incident. The General Secretary, Andrew Curtin, says the party took the call not to tell anyone else initially. He justified not telling the police, saying the party has taken advice from professional agencies. The Chief Executive of Help, Connor Twyford, says she was contacted by Mr Curtin last Monday.
We endorsed Labour's approach of keeping the circle small. It's absolutely up to the people who experience sexual harm to decide what they want to do next. We're looking for a survivor-led approach in this, and that's what I ascertained Labour was doing when Andrew contacted me last week.
The Chief Executive of Help, Connor Twyford. A woman was carjacked at gunpoint in Waikato today. 2 men, believed to be in their mid to late teens and wearing dark hoodies, forced the woman out of her car about 1 o'clock this afternoon in Stanley Street in Tokoroa. The police say one of the young men pointed a gun at the woman. The men drove off, heading north towards Bela Street in the town. The car with the registration DTT 185 hasn't been found. The police say the 2 young men shouldn't be approached. A Nelson lawyer says his 15-year-old client was held in a police cell for 6 nights because there were no beds available at any youth justice facility in the country. John Sanderston says the boy was arrested and charged with burglary last Wednesday and was declined bail when he appeared in the Nelson Youth Court the following day. He says Oranga Tamariki was supposed to take the teenager but didn't have any secure beds, so his client was remanded in custody. A local marae offered to take him, but the court refused because he had a history of running away. He was released on bail this afternoon, and Mr Sandston is reporting what happened to the Children's Commissioner. The police are looking for 3 people believed to be connected to the importation of 13.5 kilograms of methamphetamine with an estimated street value of $2.4 million. A 22-year-old Waikato man and a 48-year-old Auckland woman have already been charged, but Detective Inspector Paul Newman says 3 others are also being sought. He says the drugs were discovered in imported heavy machinery at Auckland Airport.
There's records of them moving across the Pacific. We believe that they've come or been sourced out of China, but we're also looking at the possibility that the drugs themselves have come from further afield.
Paul Newman says the wanted trio know the police are looking for them and should hand themselves in. A man accused of shooting dead his girlfriend says he was never physically violent or threatening towards her. Turia Rangitai is on trial in the High Court in Auckland for the murder of 22-year-old Chosen Koreheke in April last year. He took the stand this afternoon to give evidence in his own defence. Under questioning from his lawyer, Mr Tai said he and Ms Koreheke had their ups and downs and argued a lot, but the good times outweighed the bad. He denied the evidence given by Crown witnesses that he was violent towards Ms Koreheke. Turia Rangitai said he never once threatened to shoot Ms Koreheke or physically assault her. The Lyttelton Port Company says the strike by the Rail and Maritime Union has shut the port and will cause serious supply shortages. 200 port workers are striking for 13 days after negotiations with the Lyttelton Port broke down. The port company's operations manager, Paul Monk, says the port manages more than half of the South Island's container volume, and the likely impact on the strike borders on being irresponsible. The Republican-led House Select Committee on Intelligence says it's found no evidence of collusion, coordination or conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. The committee says it's now bringing its investigation to an end. Republican Congressman Mike Conaway has led the committee's investigation and says it has answered some basic questions.
Yes, the Russians tried to interfere with our election process. Yes, they had cyber attacks, active measures going on. We could find no evidence of collusion between either campaign and the Russians. And we also have some recommendations, or will have recommendations, that speak to what we do with elections going forward.
Republican Congressman Mike Conaway. It's 6:05. Sport. New Zealand netball coach Nolene Taurua has recommitted to the Australian League, ruling out any role with the Silver Ferns leading into next year's World Cup. Taurua took the Sunshine Coast Lightning to the premiership title in the inaugural Super Netball competition last year. The extension until the end of the 2019 season ends any likelihood of Taurua stepping into the Silver Ferns job, where incumbent Janine Southby is under pressure in the wake of a series of poor performances from the Ferns. New Six Nations champions Ireland have risen to number 2 in the World Rugby rankings. Ireland's win over Scotland at the weekend and England's loss to France means the two teams swap position on the rankings table. The Irish are now second to the All Blacks. The other big mover was France, who, after a poor run, jumped back into number 8. France tour here in June, and All Blacks coach Steve Hansen says France are continually improving.
France are a side that, as we all know, can either turn up or turn off, and when they turn up they're extremely difficult to play, and they're big, they're athletic and skillful, so and they've got a number of people out, so they're only going to get better. Steve Hansen. The Dunedin skier Adam Hall is in 7th place after the first round of the Super G combined at the Pyeongchang Paralympic Winter Games. The slalom is later tonight. And Wellington have extended their lead at the top of the Plunket Shield first-class cricket competition after beating Otago by 18 runs in Dunedin. Jeetan Patel took 10 wickets for Wellington in the match. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Nick Bollinger samples the music of transnational pop conglomerate Superorganism. We have a wind on the world of the South African trial that put Nelson Mandela behind bars. And our mathematician Dylan Mayhew explains the numbers behind gerrymandering. If you can't stop them from voting, you can at least ensure their votes won't count as much as yours.
And on Lately at 10, we're live and we'll be keeping you up to date with the world, talking to some of the people who have made the news or are just worth talking to. That's Lately with Karen Hay on Nights with Brian Crump on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Taumarunui and Taranaki, Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Taihape and Whanganui. A few showers about the western coasts, spreading elsewhere this afternoon and evening, then clearing and becoming fine tomorrow. But cloudy periods remain about coastal Taranaki. For Gisborne to Wairarapa, fine apart from a few showers about Wairarapa and southern Hawke's Bay this evening and overnight tonight. Manawatu to Wellington, fine apart from a few showers from late afternoon or early evening, then clearing early tomorrow, cloudy periods tomorrow evening. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, mainly fine but a few showers this afternoon and evening, some possibly heavy in Canterbury. Bulla, Westland, Fiordland and coastal Southland, cloudy periods with showers at times. Otago and the remainder of Southland, mainly fine but isolated showers this afternoon and evening. And the Chatham Islands, rain possibly heavy, easing to a few showers late this afternoon, fine breaks increasing tomorrow. It's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina Batten. Labor has been contacted by another person today claiming they were the victim of a sexual assault at a party event within the past 10 years. The senior leadership of Labor has come under intense pressure after yesterday's revelations of sexual assault at a Labor Party summer camp in February. That's last month. Of course, the party has apologised to 4 teenagers 16 years old for the most part, who was sexually harassed by a 20-year-old man at the camp, a man who was not a party staffer or member. Labour's General Secretary Andrew Curtin spoke to our political editor Jane Patterson a short time ago.
I was contacted today by someone that described to me an incident that took place several years ago. I've spoken to that person today and offered our support and our support if they wanted to take that to the police or to take it further now or at any point in the future. And we'll be keeping in touch with them about that. And we also need to, look into this as well to make sure that the Labor Party is a safe place for particularly young people to be in.
So did she give any details? You said it was some years ago, but are you able to give any more detail about when it was or what she said happened?
Yeah, we discussed the detail, but out of respect for that person, I'm not going to go into the detail.
So would you describe it as serious as what the other young people said at the Waihi event?
My understanding is that it's of a similar nature, but I don't want to diminish or overplay it, but of a similar nature.
And is there a possibility that could end up with the police?
That's a possibility, and that's an option that's open to this person. And if they want our support to facilitate that, then we will do so.
And was this a Labor Party event or a Young Labor event?
It was a Labor Party event. I won't go into any other detail on it just now.
What is your awareness or knowledge of any broader problem?
Yeah, we're becoming aware of some of these issues now, particularly this issue that I spoke about today. We want to make sure that the Labor Party is a safe place for everyone, particularly young people, and that's the focus of the review that we'll be conducting to make sure that we take the actions necessary to make that happen, and everything's on the table, not just alcohol, not just the basics, but making sure that across the party, Young Labor and other parts of the party, it's a safe environment for people.
Are you aware of any other specific incidents apart from the 3 or the 4 at Waihi and then this other person you've talked to today?
No, I'm not.
But you are concerned about a broader issue here? Is that something you're going to specifically look into?
Yes, of course we're concerned about that, and that's something that we'll be looking into. This has happened today. I've been made aware, so we're going to review the situation and probably have more to say on it.
Andrew Curtin, of course, talking to our political editor Jane Patterson a short time ago. Now, the police say people should have confidence any sexual assault allegation will be fully investigated and victims given any help available. The Labor Party has said it chose not to report the alleged sexual assaults at last month's summer camp because it didn't want to re-victimise the teenagers involved. But National Crime Manager, Detective Superintendent Tim Anderson, says police have learned from their past mistakes and the public should have trust in them to report sexual assaults.
Look, we know that for victims of sexual assault, they certainly can be re-traumatised. And for that reason, we're sensitive to their needs in terms of investigating any sort of sexual assault, whether that be they be a child or an adult. We have learned over time we've got much better at that sort of investigation and in terms of how we deal with the victims of that type of assault. Under our police, so NZ Police website, there is a section in there on adult sexual assault, so I think it said ASA. There's some helpful videos in terms of the process involved in how we investigate and what a victim is likely to encounter when they deal with the police. We've also got an email address. It's called asa@police.govt.nz, where victims of adult sexual assault or any sexual assault can email us and either ask for advice or make a complaint, and we can refer them to the appropriately trained investigator.
National Crime Manager, Detective Superintendent Tim Anderson, speaking to our reporter Zach Fleming just a short time ago, 13 minutes past 6. A Nelson lawyer is furious. His 15-year-old client was held in a police cell for 6 nights because there was nowhere else to put him. John Sandston says the boy was arrested and charged with burglary last Wednesday and was declined bail when he appeared in the Nelson Youth Court the following day. He says Oranga Tamariki was supposed to take the teenager but didn't have any secure bed, so his client was remanded in custody. Of course, we've heard these stories before. Mr. Sandston told our reporter Katie Doyle the boy was only released today.
As it turned out this morning when we appeared in court to check on the situation again, no beds available nationally again, the judge made the point that it was untenable for my client to stay in the police cells any longer. So that's why he was granted bail today. And my concern is that this kid, who's incredibly vulnerable from his... I mean, I've acted for him both in the family court as his lawyer for child, but also as his youth advocate for an extended period of time, is exposed to the dangers of being in a police station. And I mean by that particularly the psychological dangers, which can't be underrated for a kid with his vulnerabilities and his personality traits. My other concern is that this has been going on for decades. It occasionally comes up in Parliament, occasionally comes up in the media, and then it all dies away until someone highlights it again.
And what are the psychological dangers that he would have been exposed to?
Oh, well, isolation is the primary one, and particularly the risk of things like depression. He was the only person of that age, I understand, that would have been in the police station. They're not equipped in any way, shape or form to look after a young person.
And what do you think needs to be done?
For a start, if you made it illegal for kids to be housed at a police station for more than one night, that would force the system to cater for them in some other way. Because if that was the case, Oranga Tamariki would have to provide more facilities, because the reality is they've got the safety valve of the police station.
That's John Sandston talking to our reporter Katie Doyle. The Children's Commissioner Andrew Beecroft said last year the increase in youths being remanded in police cells was alarming and concerning, and certainly all the parties expressed their determination to see less of it. It's 15 and a half minutes past 6. A third of the cleaning workforce at one of the country's biggest meat processing plants is being made redundant, and the union says that means the cleaners won't be able to clean it to a hygienic standard. Wilson Hellaby, which owns the plant, won't respond to the cleaners' concerns, and neither will the cleaning contract company. Zach Fleming has been looking at this for us.
If you ate any beef, lamb or pork in Auckland today, there's a good chance this is where it came from. Auckland Meat Processors in Otahuhu. The processing arm of meat giant Wilson Hellaby supplies butcheries, supermarkets, restaurants and hotels. The site takes up a whole block off Great South Road. During the day, animals go in and nicely packaged boxes of meat come out. Then at night, cleaning time. It's a 14-person job. At least, it was.
They're going to cut the cleaning staff by a third. How are they ever going to get the cleaning done with a third less cleaners?
14 cleaners employed by multinational cleaning company ISS work from 10 p.m. till 4:30 a.m. every weekday, making sure the plant is hygienic. They clean everything, all the equipment, the chillers, the boning rooms and the carcass corridor. But come Monday the 19th of March, 14 will become 9. And the amount of cleaning to be done isn't changing.
Somehow, the other 10 will have to work out how they're going to clean the place. Yeah? No idea. No idea. I've talked to the supervisors, both of them. They're both our delegates. And they say, we don't know how we're going to do the job, you know?
The reason why the cleaners are standing silently behind Len Richards from Union Etu and not speaking for themselves is because their employer told them they can't talk to me.
The cleaners here are not allowed to speak because they've been gagged by ISS. They're not allowed to tell their own story. And they have told me that they cannot do this cleaning in the time allotted with a third less cleaners.
The cleaners raised their concerns that they won't be able to clean one of the country's biggest meat processing plants to a hygienic standard with a third less staff in a written submission.
They never replied to it, and the reply was to come out with 5 letters given to 5 people saying that you have been made redundant.
Wilson Hellaby declined to be interviewed or provide a written statement, directing Checkpoint to ISS, the cleaning contractor it uses. ISS is a massive multinational operating in 74 countries with a global revenue of more than $18 billion.
Through our more than 500,000 employees, we strive to deliver an excellent service.
Its memo to the cleaners on February the 6th said the redundancies were a result of, quote, a directive from the client, Wilson Hallaby, to realise efficiencies and reduce costs. In other words, save money. But instead of responding to Checkpoint's questions, ISS put its energy into stopping the cleaners from speaking to Checkpoint.
It's outrageous. They can't even speak about not speaking to the media.
ISS's National People Manager Heidi Ramskill phoned Len from Etu when we were outside the meat plant with the cleaners. Len put her onto me.
As an employee of ISS, I am not required to or cannot talk to the media unless I have authority from.
Okay. Well then, Heidi, can you get someone who can answer that question for me?
Yep. And as I said, I will have that answer to you within the next half an hour.
Okay.
It's been put together as we speak.
So that will be a written statement, not an interview?
Correct.
That was 3:45 in the afternoon on Wednesday. Checkpoint never received a statement, and ISS is no longer replying to our calls or emails. Playing devil's advocate in the absence of comment from ISS or Wilson Hallaby, I put to Len that maybe the cleaners are wrong and the plant can be cleaned with 5 fewer people.
I take the word of the cleaners. They're the professionals. They're the people that know the job.
But let's say, hypothetically, that Auckland meat processing can be cleaned with 5 less cleaners, though it then could become a health and safety risk. And the question then is, how hard do we want to be working the cleaners of one of Auckland's biggest meat processing plants? One of the key clients here is Countdown. Countdown wouldn't comment on the reduction in cleaners, but its meat merchandise manager Steve Mills said in a statement that Countdown has strict quality control processes and inspections in place to ensure food safety standards are maintained at all times. Mr Mills added that Auckland Meat Processors is an export accredited facility, which means it's held to a higher than normal industry standard. As well as the 5 redundancies, the cleaners have been forbidden from working overtime without prior approval. They told Len as a result of that, they'll clock out at 4:30 in the morning every day, regardless of whether the plant is fully cleaned or not. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
Now, you would have heard ISS in Zach's story say that they will get back to him in half an hour. Well, that was nearly 7 days ago, and they still haven't got back to Zach or anyone from Checkpoint. The United States has drafted a new UN resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Syria as shelling and artillery fire continued to rain down on the besieged rebel enclave of eastern Ghouta. An earlier UN resolution calling for a 30-day truce has had no effect. The American ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, says Washington may be forced to act alone to stop the Syrian government's offensive to retake the area. More than 1,000 civilians have been killed in the past month. With more, here's the BBC's Neda Tawfik from UN headquarters in New York.
Council members heard from the Secretary-General Antonio Guterres that in defiance of their resolution passed 2 weeks ago, airstrikes, shelling and ground offences have intensified in eastern Ghouta. The Syrian government now controls 60% of the enclave. Hundreds of civilians have died and more than 1,000 people, mostly children, are in need of urgent medical evacuation. The U.S. ambassador Nikki Haley accused Russia, Iran and the Syrian government of exploiting a loophole in the Security Council's ceasefire resolution, which exempts military operations against terrorist groups and their associates.
The ceasefire has failed. The situation of the civilians in eastern Ghouta is dire, and the United States is acting. We have drafted a new ceasefire resolution that provides no room for evasion. It is simple, straightforward, and binding. It will take effect immediately upon adoption by this Council. It contains no counterterrorism loopholes for Assad, Iran, and the Russians to hide behind.
Ambassador Haley said it calls for a complete 30-day ceasefire throughout eastern Ghouta and Damascus City. Russia's permanent representative, Vasily Nebenzier, said the Syrian government had the right to remove the threat of terrorism.
That's Neda Tawfik from the UN in New York. The Sharp Blacks, are winging their way to Ireland for the 2018 World Butchers Challenge. We've had it all on the show tonight, haven't we? Vegans, meatworks, butchers. Yes, New Zealand does have a team called the Sharp Blacks. The competition started in 2011 as a Trans-Tasman test and has grown quickly to a highly competitive battle between 12 countries, including Brazil, Germany, Ireland, Italy and the US. The Sharp Blacks team of 6 butchers will have 3¼ hours to break down a side of beef, pork, a whole lamb and 5 chickens into a themed display. Hannah Miller, who owns the Lady Butcher in Auckland, is the team's finisher and garnisher. She told our Rurals reporter Alexa Cook, with the team members based around the country, weekend practices and preparation are crucial.
It is tricky. With that, all that planning is what makes us able to do all of those cuts in that 3¼ hour time limit. But with the, so it's basically just making sure that everything's orchestrated ahead of time. There's no surprises on the day. You're not ever looking at a piece of meat and thinking, I wonder what I'm going to do with that. It's all predetermined. And then as far as the judging goes, they're judging you the whole time, during the entire time, as well as then your end result for what is on the table. And so they're watching for, at the beginning, they're watching for things like the guys that are doing the boning. They're watching for how clean the bones are. Is there meat left on the bones? Is there wastage that is happening? Is there meat left on silver skin, or is there too much fat left on, and things like that. And then they're watching, with the guys that are doing the value adding, so they're doing stuffing and marinating. And so for them, they're watching how are they trimming? Are they, when you want to have something, you have a nice smooth edge, are they just taking off a big piece that could be sellable? Or is it, just enough to clean it up a tiny bit? And then for myself, they're watching, my organization, how I'm garnishing, how we're finishing, making sure that all of the knots are in a nice line on the piece of meat, and everything's even, and just looks really, really tidy and clean.
And with the competition, it looks like you guys have a pretty impressive track record of winning some of these. So what do you think your chances are this year?
We're going over to bring back the trophy. So it's a long way to go to not do that. So that's what we have on our mindset, and that's the plan. We have won 3 years in a row, and then last year France came in as a brand new team and took it out. And so we're, I think, more fired up than ever to really go back and bring it back home.
And you've got the trophy, but what kind of other prizes do you get? It's a long way to go for a big competition.
Yeah. You get a trophy. There's a lot of, really, I think the main prize is the fact that, we go over and we do a study tour before the competition. And in that time, and then also in the competition, you just have this amazing opportunity to really network with fantastic butchers from around the world. There's 12 countries in it this year that are competing, and and looking at these shops and seeing how other countries are doing butchery, and to me that's an amazing prize. There's not cash or anything like that, but it's bragging rights, and it's knowing that you're the best, and knowing that you went out there and you gave it a really good go.
That was, I guess the captain, no. Do they have captains? Anyway, it was Hannah Miller, who owns the Lady Butcher in Auckland. She's the team's finisher and garnisher, talking to Alexa Cook from our Rurals team. The Sharp Blacks off to compete in a keenly contested international competition. The French fashion designer who founded the house of Givenchy in the 1950s and became famous for dressing the likes of Jackie Kennedy and Grace Kelly has died at the age of 91. Hubert de Givenchy created that little black dress worn by Audrey Hepburn in the film Breakfast at Tiffany's. Does anyone under the age of 40 know what Breakfast at Tiffany's is? Kelvin's nodding at me. Thank you, Kelvin. Born into French aristocracy, he remained a symbol of Parisian elegance for more than half a century. CNN's Linda Kincaid has this look back at his life and achievements.
Hubert de Givenchy was a giant of the fashion industry. His legendary career spanning more than 50 years, beginning in the golden age of haute couture, where designers catered to wealthy clients, and ending in the mid-90s, when ready-to-wear fashion ruled the clothing market. It all started in 1952 when Givenchy launched his own label and a revolution in women's fashion. His first collection was built around separates, skirts and blouses that women could mix and match. It was a novel concept at the time. Givenchy's clothes were simple and elegant. They quickly caught the eye of some of the world's most well-heeled women. The Duchess of Windsor wore Givenchy to her husband's funeral in 1972. He dressed Princess Grace for a visit to the White House in 1961, and he created the wardrobe for Jackie Kennedy's state visit to France that same year. But he is most often linked with Audrey Hepburn. They were close friends until her death in 1993. She was his muse. He was the man responsible for some of her most iconic looks, including the strapless organza ball gown he created for Sabrina and that famous little black dress from Breakfast at Tiffany's. Givenchy sold his brand to the LVMH group in 1988 and completely bowed out of the fashion business in 1995. But his legacy lives on. Today, the House of Givenchy is a thriving fashion label with devotees and boutiques around the globe. The company released a short statement on Twitter calling its founder a gentleman who symbolised Parisian chic and elegance for more than half a century. It went on to say he will be greatly missed.
Lydia Kincaid reporting there on the life of Hubert de Givenchy. Who knew that separates were once a fairly radical thing? I say that as a man who's worn a suit every day in his adult life, basically, except reluctantly in the weekends when my children ask me not to. Just try a T-shirt, Dad. And I just think, no, I'd rather wear a suit. Anyway, so much feedback tonight, including from Peggy, who does contact us every time we run a story from Syria, say don't just take US reportage at face value. That was a BBC report, Peggy, although admittedly from the UN, which is in New York. But we do source from a variety of agencies, CNN, Reuters and BBC in particular, for our coverage from Syria. They are the broadcast organisations that file for us here in New Zealand. Please feel free to suggest some alternatives and we'll hunt around, but I know this really exercises you. We do enjoy hearing from you. More stuff from IAG. We're going to get in touch with some of you who have texted in about IAG and their treatment of people in the panel beating and car repair business. Many of you are contacting us and saying, yep, they ain't paying us enough. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. A 15-year-old boy was kept in a police cell for almost a week because there were no secure youth justice beds available. A sexual abuse support agency says it agrees with Labour's decision not to say anything about sexual assaults at a party camp. The Waikato police are warning the public not to approach two men who carjacked a woman at gunpoint. A police interview with a man convicted of killing a road worker in 2013 seriously breached his rights. But the Crown has told a court that does not warrant a reduction in his sentence. The Littleton port says there'll be a serious supply shortages after wharfies went on strike. And a man has died after his car hit a fence in Morrinsville this afternoon. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Something for your mind.
Superorganism is a multiracial, transnational, 8-piece pop conglomerate